Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is I, yes. It's me, Brennon, here again with episode 2, yet another episode of the Too Deep Coverage podcast. I'm happy to be back. Took a brief hiatus, if you want to call it that, if that's how we would define brief. Um, I believe after I recorded that first episode, I ended up getting into a car accident. Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned on the first podcast, but I had gotten into a car accident probably a few months earlier. So I was excited to pop out and show folk that I was committed to this effort. And then immediately after recording that first episode, I got into another one. So that kind of threw off the momentum of stuff with work and other responsibilities. But we bike. We is bike. Here with episode number 2, trying to keep the momentum going, trying to really get into this effort more and more. I am really excited to talk football. Just share my perspective on things, my insight, if you will. So I'm happy to be back. I'm here in the stew again. I think last time I was at Julia Davis. Shout out to the St. Louis Public Library. This time today I am at the bar branch. That's South Side. South Side. So shout out to everybody from the South Side of St. Louis. Shout out to St. Louis in general. We just got so much stuff going. So many people doing so many things. You know what I mean? We got folks skipping camp so that they can go to the Olympics and hang out with Bay. We got folks reuniting with their first love. You know, the star on the helmet. You know what I mean? We got folks winning NBA championships. You feel me? Like, we just doing big things. We got folks marrying pop stars that's been fine forever, finally putting babies in them. Like, we got folks doing all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? We really doing a great job in the celebrity space. Now, we do have one celebrity who is not, in my opinion, my humble opinion, not painting us in the best light. Not too much I could do about that one. She's young and turned, and it's her time right now. But to each their own. But you know what I'm saying? We got a ratio of like 4-1. You know what I mean? We're doing pretty good. I think that's a pretty good ratio. 4 out of 5. It's 80%. That's a solid B. So we doing really good. Shout out to St. Louis. And listen, I was gonna wear my Battlehawks attire. I just decided to wear the standard XFL 2.0 joint, showing solidarity with my Battlehawks. From the last time I recorded to now, we did have the UFL playoffs, the merged XFL and USFL. Battlehawks got to the conference championship, the XFL conference championship. Couldn't get it done. I think AJ was hobbled. He didn't look healthy. He didn't look like he was really stepping into his throws. We were running the ball decent, but we weren't taking enough shots down the field. The defense was doing a hell of a job trying to hold up. We played the San Antonio Brahmas, but Wade Phillips had that defense ready. I don't think they really feared our receivers because it was a lot of blitzing, a lot of stunts, and they just put pressure on AJ, and it was an ugly game. And then the championship game was even uglier. I just so happened to buy tickets to that because I wanted to get the championship tickets early for the UFL because it's the first ever UFL championship. The Rock's going to be there and whoever else. Brady was there. I think he was in the booth for a second. I actually saw him walking into the stadium because it was in St. Louis. I saw Brady walking into the stadium. Kurt Warner was there. Torrey Holt was there. It was a lot of folks there of note. And I wanted to get my tickets early in case the Battlehawks made it. So that way I already had my seats. And then the Battlehawks lost. So I couldn't sell the tickets because nobody wanted to see Birmingham against San Antonio in St. Louis. Nobody was going for that. And those folks weren't really traveling. You know what I mean? They couldn't fill up their own stadiums. So there was no chance of them traveling to St. Louis to support either franchise. But nevertheless, I ended up keeping the tickets. The championship game was on Father's Day. Ended up going to that. My dad seemed to enjoy it. Very simple man. Doesn't need a whole lot. But that was a terrible game. I was struggling. I mean, and there's nothing but Battlehawks fans in the stadium. So like we're booing both teams. Um, it was cool. It was an experience for sure. But I can honestly say from XFL 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0 that eventually merged into the UFL. I've been a big fan of spring football. I look forward to talking more about spring ball next spring. I wanted to start this strategically, just focusing on the NFL for now, but we'll see how it goes. Eventually, we'll hope to branch off into spring ball, talk a little bit more about some of those guys as they get signed to NFL rosters, or as they get plucked away as undrafted free agents from the NFL, or straight from the college ranks and get drafted into the XFL if they don't get drafted into the NFL. I think it's some good ball that's being played over there, some good prospects, and it's football. I love football. So if I get football in the spring and it's entertaining to me, I'm gonna talk about it. But yeah, so that all's happened. Um, I know people always talk about the off season with the NFL, like they dread the off season and they hate the off season. I'm not a big fan of the off season myself, but then I had to think about it. I had to really reflect and analyze and realize, yo, there's really never an off season, especially if you are keeping up with free agency and you're keeping up with the draft and you're keeping up with the scouting combine and you're keeping up with the trades and you're keeping up with OTAs and training camp and all those different things. There's really only a small window of inactivity in the NFL if you look at it through that lens. And we just happen to be in that window right now. Like I'm recording early July. And we just happen to be in that window where there's no activity. All the players are on vacation. They're taking their month and a half or so, about 5-6 weeks off between OTAs and minicamp and the beginning of training camp. There's been talks this offseason about restructuring that schedule, and players seem pretty divided. A lot of players want to maintain the schedule that's been what it is historically, do the ramp up following the draft with OTAs and minicamp, take that solid month and a half break, then come into training camp, ramp up into the regular season with preseason games and stuff. Others have gotten on the bandwagon of backloading all that activity into one long ramp up into the season. So OTAs and mini camps would be combined with training camp, and you would just have that extended month and a half break lumped into the break following the Super Bowl or following whenever your team got knocked out. So say your season ended in early January, week 18, you would have January, February, March, April, May, and June off. 6 consecutive months. And then July, late June or early July would be the beginning of OTAs and mini camp and right into training camp. That's how a lot of players would prefer it. So that way it's a gradual ramp up. Their argument is it's less room for injury. It's less opportunity for a disconnect or an interruption of their training regimen or how they're preparing and how they're getting ready for the season, because that interruption can throw off, the progress that you've made, chemistry with your teammates, quarterbacks with receivers, running backs with their O-line, defenses with their defensive communication in the back end with the secondary or the front seven. So it made sense. Like the argument makes sense to make those changes. My concern was injury, just more frequent breaks. I think can assist with less injuries, and I think having earlier OTAs can also be more beneficial for rookies and younger players, as well as guys that may have been changing uniforms. A lot of guys changed teams this offseason, prominent names, prominent players. And when they get to that new franchise, they want to hurry up and get acclimated. They want to get into the system. They want to learn the terminology. They want to build the chemistry with their teammates. They want to learn the coaching style, the facilities, the new city that they're in, and they want to get into their rhythm of playing ball with their new team. And if you take all of that time away in May and June, that's a longer period of time before they can really get acclimated, which kind of slows down their process of being the best player they can become the fall. So it's I can see the argument on both sides. We'll see what the competition committee chooses to do, or the front office folk, whoever is responsible for that decision. There were some other rule changes that I do want to get to later in the episode as well. Definitely want to touch on since the last episode. So in the meantime, if you're hanging out with me, I appreciate your ears. I appreciate your eyes. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. If you feel so fit or so sure to do, you can also share this episode with family and friends, those your social media profiles, and let them know what I'm trying to do over here with Too Deep Coverage podcast. Wow. Give me 1 second here. Dang. Oh, wow. I just got an alert to my phone from ESPN. Hold on a second, and you'll be able to tell what day this was recorded by this alert, but 1 second here. Wow. Yeah, just got some unfortunate news. I was excited about this guy too. Minnesota Vikings cornerback Kyrie Jackson died in an automobile accident. I believe it was last night. This was about an hour ago that this news first hit Twitter. Golly. Kyrie Jackson, the cornerback for the Oregon Ducks, played for Oregon in 2023 after spending 2 seasons in Alabama. That's where I remember him from. He was with the Crimson Tide. He got drafted in the 4th round by the Vikings just this year. I was not expecting that. That literally just came across my phone while we're recording. Well, I would definitely be interested in getting more of the details on how the accident transpired, what were the circumstances. My immediate reaction, or I would say my immediate thought to not be insensitive or inconsiderate of his passing was, I know that a lot of activity, I don't want to speculate. If there was any foul play involved, if it was any speeding or any alcohol, any drugs, any kind of recklessness, if any of that was at play, it kind of feeds back to the topic I had just hopped off of with the off season, where if you have too much time, because we're in that window I just mentioned, between OTAs and minicamp and training camp, if you have that downtime after you've kind of, worked yourself into this kind of state of being amped up and you're ready to go, the testosterone's flowing, and in his case, young player, first time in the league and first time getting money and um, whatever else, you get this break between OTAs and minicamp and then training camp. And it can provide a lot of opportunities for recklessness. I was saying earlier about, um, you know, old girl, young and turnt. That's the thing. You know what I'm saying? And to be young and turnt, and then add some money on top of it, add some notoriety and some fame on top of it. That can be dangerous. So again, I don't want to speculate. I've got a strong suspicion, just because of the timing and because of the brief details that I see here. Um, Man, let's see if I can find something else here. Uh, because that that time frame provides a lot of that opportunity for those younger players to detach and to enjoy the early fruits of their collegiate labor. If you're a newly drafted player, you go straight from the draft into OTAs and minicamp. So the facility, the franchise, they have you. They have, I don't want to say they have control of you, but they have access to you. They have some influence to your day-to-day activity, your behavior, structure, providing you some direction and some focus. And then you break that. You get what I'm saying? Like, whatever momentum is built up gets broken, and then it's like, oh yeah, you're free to do whatever you want to do. And that's just, I already thought this, but this kind of reinforces what I thought. It's not good to break that continuity once you've got it built up, especially for guys who may not, and I'm not saying this about a Kyrie Jackson. I don't know him. I don't know the circumstances, but in general, it's not good to just um, give guys contracts and say, have your way, do what you want to do, without some, without that structure, that direction. So, um, looking at ESPN, see if they got anything different. Yeah, no details yet. He's from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. His mom reported the news to TMZ, and the crash was overnight. So, what time in the morning was it? What all was involved? Were they racing? It's just, and I'm only providing that speculation because we've heard the news many different times, many different years. The older you get, the more those grays start to come in. You start noticing patterns and observing things that happen with greater frequency and regularity, and you don't want to put those puzzle pieces together, but it's almost like you've seen the story so many times before. It's like you almost hope, like, man, I hope this is not what it is. But a lot of the signs, statement from Kevin O'Connell, the head coach for the Minnesota Vikings. I am absolutely crushed by this news. Kyrie brought a contagious energy to our facility and our team. His confidence and engaging personality immediately drew his teammates to him. In our short time together, it was evident Kyrie was going to develop into a tremendous professional football player. But what was more impressive was his desire to become the best person he could be for his family and those around him. I am at a loss for words. My heart goes out to Kyrie's family, friends, teammates, and coaches, end quote. Rest in peace to that brother. Definitely send my prayers and my condolences to his family and his loved ones. Well, that was not how I was expecting to start episode 2. Um, but that's life, man. Real life happens in real time. Um, I'm not a fan of shying away from stuff like that because even with how I'm trying to formulate this platform and really forge my own identity with it, I don't ever want it to just be about ball because it's not possible for a sport to just be about the sport when you're dealing with human beings, human lives. It's so many other things at play. And you know what's crazy? And not to make this about me, but I literally started this episode talking about how I was in my second car accident in 4 months: February, March, April, May. 3 months. Two car accidents in 3 months. So when I'm hitting the road, your boy be praying. Straight up. Like I already was after accident number one. I already was from the accidents in years past. When I get in that car, I'm thanking God, like, man, please keep this car safe. Thank you for the car. Thank you for the ability to purchase it and drive it. And I use it for income. And thank you. Keep me safe. And to get in that second one, I'm like, okay, now we gonna have to go in a hyper overdrive, not just overdrive, hyper overdrive, because this is nuts. And the way people have been driving in St. Louis, I don't know how it is in other cities, other locations, but it's getting worse. Shout out to the Nissan gang. if you if you see somebody in St. Louis driving a Nissan, just slow down. Just let them go. All right, that it's not even worth it. Just get out the way and just let them have the road. Because chances are, I digress. I'm gonna say that for another episode. I got a theory about Nissans from spending years on the road doing Uber and doing other driving related jobs. Just seeing driving patterns where I'm from, at least. Like I said, it might be different in other cities, but in St. Louis, Missouri, you see somebody driving a Nissan, get out the way. Um, yeah, man, it's rough out here. We're gonna try to keep it pushing, man, because it's the off season and because things like that can happen um, in the blink of an eye. Um, we want to try to enjoy this game for what it is. Um, I try to have a positive lens and a positive view on the off season, on gaps like this where you have this time of no activity. Um, and I just try to find ways to get hype, find ways to get excited. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the contracts with the skill guys. Like I said, I'll get into some of the rule changes later on, but there were some major contracts that went down in the past few months. Most notably, Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey. Um, I won't say they reset the market. I think this is Justin Jefferson's first big contract. So he definitely, I would say he set the market because it wasn't like it was a shocker that he got the deal that he got. He should have gotten the deal that he got that put him in the upper echelon, if not the top. I think it's the top contract. Yeah, it was the top contract in NFL history for a non-quarterback, um, based on like annual average. So I think everybody saw that coming. The interesting part, and not to get too ahead of myself, is just how many receivers have started to nip at his heels in the past 2 years. Now, granted, he's dealt with injury. His quarterback went down with injury about midway through last season in Kirk Cousins, and now Kirk Cousins is gone. So we'll see how that impacts production because they had great rapport. But nevertheless, past 2 or 3 seasons, here comes CeeDee Lamb performing up to his potential. Here comes Jamar Chase, even though Jamar Chase had two other number one receivers on his roster. Now it's just one. against his will. Here comes Amon-Ra St. Brown, which I try to remove my bias out of it. I don't quite see it, but the production is the production. He's in that conversation. I mean, Tyreek, I won't say here comes Tyreek, but Tyreek been there. You know what I'm saying? And he got hurt last year. He probably would have went for 2 stacks, which would have been crazy, right? I've long been uh, Tyreek truther, or a non-believer, I should say. I fought against that. I fought uphill on that one, and I had to give that up as well. So all these other receivers have strong claims that they're the best in the league. Let us not forget about Devontae Adams. Let us not forget about DeAndre Hopkins. Now Calvin Ridley has changed teams. So there's a lot of competition for that top spot. And they're closer to Justin last year and going into this season than they were maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Which if you miss time or you have a dip in production, that's all it could take for somebody to take that crown from you. Nevertheless, congratulations to these 2 young men, Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey, for setting the market in their respective positions. Well deserved for their previous performances and their potential moving forward. Justin Jefferson got 4 years for $140 million. That's just a lot of, I think we can get so numb to the numbers in the NFL or these other professional sports that we forget that millions of dollars are millions of dollars. If you have $1 million a year, scratch that. If you make $250,000 a year in the United States of America, you're in the top 10% or top 1%, somewhere in that top range. That's where you at. All right, if that's what you make annually before taxes, $250K. Now put another zero at the end of that. You out of here. You're in a whole other category by yourself. That's just $2 million. Just to use for a reference in this conversation, this contract gives Justin Jefferson $35 million a year. And some people be like, "Oh, well, it's people making way more than that a year." But I just want you to wrap your mind around what you're making, what your last paycheck said. The fact that you're getting a paycheck, let's just look at it that way. Number one, and some of y'all may have salaries, but even with that, number two, it ain't 35 mil a year. So it just sometimes I just have to wrap my mind around. Man, these guys is making bread. Not even talking about NBA or NFL or NBA or MLB contracts, baseball contracts. But I digress. $35 million a year, like I said earlier, the highest average paid non-quarterback in NFL history. I'm sure they could have phrased that better. Highest average paid non-quarterback. I don't know. Try to keep it brief. $110 million guaranteed. So as soon as he signed that contract, he was guaranteed $110 million, and $88.7 million of those dollars were guaranteed at signing. So as soon as he signed his name on the contract, they put $88.7 million in his bank account. That's crazy. I log into my bank account right now. I got Chase. I got shout out to One United, the largest black-owned bank in the United States, probably in the world. I log into my One United account while I'm talking to you guys right now. And if I saw $88.7 million, if I saw 88,700,000 0.1 cents, because that's all that's in the account right now. If I saw that in the account right now, I would just shut this off. That would be the end of Too Deep coverage. I'm going to buy an island. I don't know if I get a yacht. I would get a private jet to get to the island. And then I would probably buy the UFL or create my own league and go from there. I don't know what I would do. Like I honestly don't know. That would freak me out. I can't imagine these guys who probably have come from, you know, lower circumstances or lesser than circumstances. They get these contracts and they go into their accounts, or they, you know, have their people present these numbers to them, and it's just like, yeah, that's yours. The guaranteed money, 88.7 million guaranteed at signing. That's crazy. 30 he had a 36.9 signing bonus, 36.9 million, which I don't know how that plays out with the guaranteed money. But yeah, man, Justin Jefferson, as a former receiver on a much lower level, but understanding some of the intricacies. Lord have mercy, can I speak today? Some of the intricacies of the game in the position, just a few of them. Um, he's the best receiver in the game. He wasn't the best route runner when he got into the league. He's greatly refined that. He's increased his tree. He's added branches. He's got the speed to beat you over the top. He's got the size to jump over you. He's got the route savvy to work the middle of the field, the short routes. He is a very willing blocker. That part of his game is undersold because receivers got to be able to block. Um, Makes the contested catches, makes the highlight reel catches. He's like a Odell 2.0. What Odell could have been if he didn't get hurt and had consistent play at quarterback. A bigger, stronger, faster version of Odell, if you can imagine that. Because Odell was, I think people sleep on how explosive Odell Beckham Jr. was in his early years with the New York Giants. Justin Jefferson has eclipsed that as far as athleticism and potential. And he has a chance to exceed and add to what that could have been for OBJ. Justin Jefferson is a multi-sport athlete, so he's bringing a different sensibility to the field when he's setting up his routes, when he's chopping, when he's cutting. Um, he has a different savvy that many of the other receivers don't have. Tyreek, straight power guy. As short as he is, there's not a lot of wiggle or finesse. It's straight gas, speed. My speed is going to set you up for the deep ball. It's going to set you up for the hitch or the curl or the in route or the slant. Jamar Chase, power. Different kind of power because he's much bigger. I think he's like 6'3", 6'4". Maybe he's just 6'2". I don't know how tall Jamar Chase is. But as explosive as he can be as well, because he is relatively fast for his size and just in general. He's not necessarily known for finesse. He's only 6 feet tall. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. That can't be accurate. That's what Wikipedia said. NFL.com says he is 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. There is no way in the world that Jamar Chase is 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. I don't believe that. So then how tall is Justin Jefferson? The math ain't mathing. I like to think I'm pretty good with height, being that I've always been shorter. Justin Jefferson is 6'1". I knew he was taller, but I thought he was significant. Okay. These guys look huge when they're on the field. And maybe it's just the corners they're going up against, the DBs. I don't know. But Jamar Chase, the 200 pounds, he's more compact at that 6 feet height, 6 feet 0 inches, 600 as they say now. They put the 0 in front of the inch. 601, 604. At 6 feet, 200 pounds, he's more compact, powerful receiver. He invites the contact in his game, and oftentimes he will discourage DBs from contacting him over time because they don't want to keep hitting that big dude. CeeDee Lamb, the Yak King, yards after catch. He loves the speed sweeps, the slants, the hitches, and just being able to use that kick return savvy that he has to work down the field. Um, Not the best route runner yet. I'm not going to put him in the Debo camp, which Debo basically has no route tree. He is a, a gadget guy, just a get open guy, GOG. But I would say CD is progressing a little bit more with his route running, but it's just a matter of just getting him the ball, let him be a game breaker, kind of like what Dez was, Dez Bryant, the '88 before him. But Justin Jefferson, complete. I would say I'm biased. Devontae Adams. I was on the Devontae Adams bandwagon late because I was previously on the D Hop bandwagon, defending DeAndre Hopkins as the best receiver in the game. Devontae Adams came to the Raiders. I immediately became a Devontae Adams fan. It's like I saw the light. Oh yeah, he is the best. You know what? He is. He is the number one receiver. Justin Jefferson has eclipsed that. Let me put this on silent. Y'all keep bothering me. He's the best. And the contract that he got is deserving. Now, some of the guys that I mentioned, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, their contracts are preparing to expire. They're going to get some extensions or some new deals soon. They're looming. So for Justin Jefferson to set the market where he did, it's going to be interesting to see how some of these performances this fall will influence the new deals for some of these younger receivers. I don't think there's much competition at either position, receiver or running back, for the market to be reset anytime soon, unless it's Tyreek. I would say he's the guy. Most of these other receivers have um, noteworthy competition for targets that can eat into their production value. T. Higgins in Cincinnati, Devontae Smith in Philly for A.J. Brown. They keep talking about Jameson Williams in Detroit. Shout out to St. Louis again, St. Mary's. I'll hold my breath objectively because from a fantasy standpoint, Jameson Williams let me down 2 seasons in a row. So I'll just hold my breath. And I also was not encouraged by what I saw on the field from him. It just didn't seem like he had the confidence and the consistency needed to be that true number one receiver, let alone compete with the production of an Amon-Ra St. Brown. So we'll see what happens in that with that. And yes, Tyreek Hill has Jalen Waddle as a competition for targets, but Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill. Um, I think he's the only one that could compete contractually for the deal that Justin Jefferson just got anytime soon. I think he just got his extension last year, if I'm not mistaken. So he might not even be in the competition or the conversation anytime soon. Let's talk about these running backs. Christian McCaffrey, 2 years, $38 million as the extension. Again, from a general layman doing a homemade podcast, I'll take it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be mad about it. In context to the rest of the league, for that to be the highest paid running back compared to 2 or 3 generations ago of the NFL is very unfortunate. Now we're just gonna. I like to use averages, annual averages. I think that's a better metric of performance and value when it comes to stats and money. So I tend to lean on average yards per game for a quarterback or a running back or receiver. Yards per game to me is a better metric of how good you were over a sustained period of time than just your total yardage. You get what I'm saying? Same thing for money. I think if you're making 16 million, 19 million, 25, 30, 50 million a year, that's a better metric of your value to a franchise than the total dollars. The reason I say that is because even though CMC got this extension added on to his previous contract, which was like 2 years left on that deal from Carolina for, was it 2 years for 24 million? I didn't take that note, but he had his total value for his contract with this extension is 62 million. 4 years for 62 million. He had 2 years left on the old deal, 2 years added on of new money for 38 mil, which was 19 million a year, and then the total value is 62.2 million dollars for the next 4 years in San Francisco. In comparison, Alvin Kamara is making more total dollars, but he has an extra year on his deal. So if you're just looking at the total money, it looks like Kamara is the highest paid running back, but it's just because he has a longer contract. And we can all agree that the Alvin Kamara of recent is not the Alvin Kamara old. He has not been producing to that same level. Not all his fault, but he has had some opportunities to be a better a better running back than what he's been in the past when he had Drew Brees. But it's not about Kamara. Shout out to CMC for getting that contract. Another well-deserved contract, that extension. He was already the highest paid running back prior at 16 million a year. Again, going off of the average, but he widened that gap to $19 million a year. And it's very similar to Justin Jefferson. He's just a unicorn kind of player. CMC can do it all. He can line up in the slot. He can line up wide. He can run the whole route tree as a receiver, which in this day and age, you need that running back that's going to give you that versatility. That's why you can see the trend of running backs being drafted that have receiving prowess. Jameer Gibbs, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. That list goes on and on. Those guys that can be true 3-down backs, and 3-down from the sense that they're not necessarily going to block as well as like Ezekiel Elliott on that 3rd down, but he'll be able to leak out into the backfield or motion into the slot, motion into the formation, and run an actual route as an extra receiver. So you can never really pinpoint what he's going to do on any given down. That's the kind of versatility you want from that running back, and that's him. There was concern early in CMC's career. I was big on the bandwagon of just saying he's too small, he's too slight, he's going to get injured too frequently. They're not going to be able to take full advantage of his capabilities for an extended period of time in Carolina. And lo and behold, he had 2 or 3 seasons where he got hurt early. But since he's been in San Francisco, he's been the model of consistency and healthiness. I don't think he's missed but maybe a game, if that. I know he had 1 season in the past 2. I don't know if it was this past season or the season prior where he didn't miss a game. And he looks very healthy. Looks very solid. So he put that to rest. $24 million guaranteed at signing. Goes straight into the bank account for CMC. $14.29 million signing bonus. Nobody is within $4 million of his average per year. So he's at 19. The next closest is Kamara at 15 million a year. And I just think that's because of, like I said, his versatility. Kamara, even at his peak, couldn't run between the tackles with the same effectiveness as CMC. Had the same receiving prowess. But even with that, I don't think he was as explosive of a receiver as CMC was at any point. And I don't think anybody else is really close. Now, I do have a dark horse for somebody that can resurrect their career. And that's Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon is in a much better situation, not just for his skill set, but for his explosiveness than at any point in New York. Obviously, a vastly improved receiving core, much better offensive line. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Jalen Hurts. He had one great year for the Super Bowl season. He was having an okay year last year before the Eagles just fell off a cliff. But I do think he is an improvement from Daniel Jones. I just don't think the gap is as big as a lot of people may think between Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones. The jury is still out for me on that one. I will say he's better. I don't know for sure if he's that much better than Daniel Jones, and that's because Daniel Jones has never had what Jalen Hurts has had. So I don't know. But improvement at quarterback. The offense is going to be much better. The defense is going to be much better. I think it's going to provide Saquon many, many, many more opportunities to really show his full capability. Just like a CMC in San Francisco versus Carolina. Being in a new environment, new team, I think that can rejuvenate a player's career. So I think that Saquon has a chance to really break out this year. But other than that, all these other running backs that changed scenery and changed teams, I didn't really see any that jumped out as a potential competitor for CMC contractually. Saquon was probably the biggest one because he's still relatively young, but in running back years, they consider him old. Derrick Henry, I'll be honest, as old as he is in running back years or in general NFL years, I think he kind of got disrespected with his contract. Um, I think that I think that Derrick Henry deserved more than what he got. I think he got like what was it, like 2 years for 16 million. Yep, 2 years for $16 million. But that's just where the market is, and I'll talk about that in a second. Joe Mixon went to Houston. I don't think he really fulfilled his potential in Cincinnati, and I don't think Houston is that much better of a situation than Cincinnati. I honestly don't think it's better at all. But who knows? It could the offense might be a little bit more open for Joe. I never really saw him hit the hole consistently to the extent that he could. Um, but the offensive line in Cincy was never great from the time that they drafted Joe Burrow. So I'm not gonna put that on Joe. Um, Even still, not competing against CMC for the top spot. I don't see that. Josh Jacobs to the Packers, good riddance. He ain't been doing nothing but talking trash about the Raiders since he left. Full bias. I hope he stays healthy. I heard news that he was already nicked up in OTAs, which would be fitting. Um, get your money, big dog. I don't see him competing for the top spot. DeAndre Swift went to the Bears from the Eagles by way of the Lions, and Tony Pollard went to the Titans. None of these, you know what I mean? All of them have had great moments or time in the spotlight. Austin Eckler to the Commanders from the Chargers, but none of them are competing with CMC. Like I said, the only one I could really see um, anytime soon would be Saquon. Now, some of those young guys, a lot of people are higher on Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not really sure, and I think that's because he's got David Montgomery doing a lot of spelling. Bijan proved why people were very high on him, at least in the fantasy world, out the gate. His versatility, quickness, explosiveness, and he can work out the backfield as well. He might have something to say in a couple years, but his contract's not up until like 2027, so he's locked in for a second. Um, Brees Hall, he might be the one to me soon. If not this season, then next season. I think he's going to have a lot to say um, to those two guys, CMC and Saquon, from my perspective. And that's because what he did last season with the carousel of quarterbacks that they had after Aaron Rodgers got hurt said a lot to me. Now you get a guy who's veteran, savvy, proven, calm, knows how to work the offense and utilize his weapons. I think that's going to be. I think Brees can have a phenomenal season. I'll just leave it at that. So he might be the one to challenge CMC. But Nothing as far as like guys that have a solidified track record suggests that they're going to just flip the switch like some of the receivers would with Just Jeff. Um, Maybe Nick Chubb could have made a claim before he got hurt. That injury last year really messed him up. And shout out to the Browns for being faithful even with that injury and saying, "Hey, we got your back. We're still gonna give you a 1 year deal at least, just to get time to get healthy and see if we can get you back on the field and try to rehab your career and restore you again." Because this is the second time they've been so gracious to him from when they got him out of college. So I thought that was dope for the Browns to do. Respectable franchise the Browns are, at least from the outside looking in. I always respected their fan base, respected their commitment to the team in the down years, the bag over the head years. Um, they I just feel like they try to do the right thing. Now they don't always make the right decisions when it comes to personnel, but you know, um, let's see. I just got an extension from the library. Yes, thank you. What else did I want to talk about? Oh yeah, Travis Etienne. We got to look out for him. Um, all of these are going to be next season though. That their contracts are up 2025. Travis Etienne, Brees Hall, James Cook, Kyron Williams for the Rams. Very interested to see how that's going to work, especially since they just drafted Blake Corum from Michigan. With the Michigan head coach now being the Chargers head coach, it's going to be very interesting. Um, Not the Chargers, the Rams. Never mind, scratch that. Because he went to the Rams. But yeah, the devaluing of the running back market is something that I had been talking about for years in my group chats. So I always try to distinguish between what it could be, what it should be, and what it is. You feel what I'm saying? Shout out to my homie Juan. He caught me saying that uh, in a live chat one time. I think I just got really animated and it just came out like that. But oftentimes people will look at what it should be or what it could be. Like, well, this should be this or it could be that. Or it's like, that's great. But at some point in life, all of us have to accept it is what it is. There are some things you just can't change, you just can't control. And you just got to call it what it is. And one of those things was the devaluing of the running back market. I saw that coming from a mile away. Um, I remember the era, I would say the final era of the running back when LT had scored like 35 touchdowns, 32 touchdowns, rushing in a season, 16-game season. Now they're trying to get to 18. That was it. You know what I'm saying? Lorenzo Neal clearing the path. You got Antonio Gates on the wing doing some blocking, a little bit of blocking. And then you got these trees on the outside, a receiver helping you out. The offense was centered around the running back, and they had different value. You know, I used to know more of the running backs' names in the NFL than I knew the receivers' names. That era has passed. We are in the passing era, and running backs, as great as CMC is, are not going to get that same level of consideration when it comes to contract talks as a receiver who may be a lesser talent, but is a receiver. Shout out to Brandon Ayuk. You know, I know him, T. Higgins, guys like that, Calvin Ridley. As they've been looking for new deals, Calvin ended up getting his. As disrespected as they might feel for how their contract talks have went or are going, it pales in comparison to what the running backs are dealing with. The top running back in the NFL is averaging $19 million a year, and I think that's not even like top 10 when it comes to uh, receiver money. Not even top 10, not top 20. CMC's average money per year $19 million a year, is ranked under Brandon Cooks' average money a year. Let that sink in. Brandon Cooks is the number 2 receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. Great receiver. Don't get me wrong. Been doing it for a long time for a lot of teams and a lot of quarterbacks. 1,000 yards locked in. I respect Brandon Cooks. I love his game. It's nothing against him. But he's averaging $19.8 million a year, which is the 22nd ranked contract for a receiver. And he's making more than Christian McCaffrey is every year. The times, they are changing. And it's mostly because franchises started realizing that those players are replaceable. I can get a cheap running back early in the draft or midway through the draft, really midway or later in the draft, because I think, who am I thinking about? Jonathan Brooks, who was widely considered the top ranked running back in the 2024 class. He got drafted in the second round, 46th pick by the Panthers. So midway through the second round, the Panthers got their, hopefully, franchise running back for peanuts. Don't have to put him on the first round rookie wage scale. And they don't have to pay him much of anything. And now they can start to pour into their receivers, pour into their defense, pour into their quarterback. Dollars. I think this is where we are. Running backs get hurt more frequently. They have a shorter shelf life on average. They don't get as many yards per touch as a receiver does. The math just isn't in the favor of the running backs. So, thusly, the market reflects that. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And also, franchises are starting to get more frugal on the front end of their deals. So, if I do realize I got a younger back, I already don't have to pay him. But now I can backload his contract even more to where I have to pay him even less on the front end, at least on the second deal. Maybe on the first deal. I don't know if they do that so much on the rookie deal. But at least on that second deal, because that's what they did with CMC. He's only getting paid $1 million this year, base salary. And then they moved all of his new money to the back half of the deal. So, again, that frees up cap space so that they can pay Brock Purdy, or they can try to pay Brandon Ayuk if they can come to some middle ground, or whatever other player that they need to target in free agency or on the roster already for an extension. Versus if they try to pay CMC that straight $19 million a year, it would cripple franchises. So they found a way to do it, but a lot of teams aren't able to do that. And that's why so many running backs changed rooms this offseason, because teams are not willing to pay them. I don't want to say pay them what they were worth, because worth is subjective, but pay them based on the market. They're willing to say, I know this is what the market says, but I just don't feel like doing it. I feel like I can do better. Or I might have a little bit of a drop off with another player, but it's not going to be so significant that saving that money ain't going to be worth it. I'd rather save the money and have a little bit of a drop off than pay you what the market dictates you should get. This is where franchises are on. And I don't necessarily agree with it. I'm not celebrating it, but I've been making that argument for some years, and this offseason just kind of proved that. So yeah, that's the contract talk. It's not really much else going on, like I said. It's just pretty business as usual. Shout out to my Raiders. They're still trying to work through this quarterback competition, which I'm not particularly excited about. Rooting for Aiden O'Connell. But I also want the best guy to win. So if that's Gardner Minshew, I'm with it. Sam Darnold got named the starter of the Vikings. We'll see how long that lasts with J.J. McCarthy in the wings. I'm actually rooting for Sam. I think that he has the potential to have a Geno Smith type of resurgence to his career, being in a better system and with a quarterback coach who was a former quarterback in the league. All you need, I won't say all, sometimes what you need is a guy that's just going to believe in you. And if you have that guy that believes in you, it can work wonders. Pete Carroll believed in Geno, and we saw how that transpired. Sam Darnold's in a perfect situation to perform. He's got the coach that believes in him. He's got the top paid receiver in football and the history of football. Um, well, yeah, they got Aaron Jones at running back if he can stay healthy. Solid running back for the Packers for years. You got T.J. Hawkinson. You got Jordan Addison on the other side. The offense is there for him. He's just got to show if he wants it. The rookies are set to start. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, mostly quarterback stuff. Hear rumors that Caleb Williams is struggling early. I don't put too much stock in that. I'm not saying he's going to be the best rookie quarterback or the best quarterback from that class, but I'm not going to be so disrespectful to say he's not going to have a great season or at least a solid season. He's in a very similar, if not better, situation to Sam Darnold. Just so many pieces been added to that Bears offense. The defense was already building and getting solid towards the end of last season when they traded for Montez Sweat. I think he's going to be okay. Aaron Rodgers missed minicamp or missed a day of mandatory minicamp or maybe a day or two. It's a slow news cycle. So we just, folks in the media find stuff to talk about and hype it up more than what it is. Apparently, he had already had that time scheduled to miss. It wasn't random. It was understood and agreed upon within the organization. Nobody else was tripping except nobody in the organization was tripping, I should say that. But I'm definitely curious to see how he does with the Jets in the fall. Let me talk about these rule changes real quick because I did hit an hour. The rambler that I am. Two of the rule changes that took place that were really eye-opening or noteworthy for the history of the game as well as just the current format of the game. The unprecedented change to the kickoff rule, which I'll touch on in a second, and then this super polarizing hip drop tackle ban. Before last season, we didn't know. No one knew what a hip drop was. That phrase didn't exist. It wasn't in the NFL lexicon. Maybe it was with rugby, which is where it was borrowed from. But most football fans weren't referring to that technique as a hip drop. We now have a name for it. It makes sense. The definition of it, just going straight to the rule that was passed, Article 18, hip drop tackle. It is a foul if a player uses the following technique to bring a runner to the ground. A, they grabs the runner. Lord have mercy. A, grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms. And B, unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs at or below the knee. It's a penalty moving forward. If you execute a hip drop tackle, it's going to be a 15-yard penalty and an automatic first down for the offense. So I think the penalty is reasonable, not up for debate. You should be subjected to a potential fine, especially if you're a repeat offender of the hip drop tackle. No issue with the penalty portion. The issue is going to be executing the flag, like finding the right opportunity to throw the flag. And it's primarily because of letter B. Unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs at or below the knee. So that's going to be the point of contention for referees, for front office personnel, for what's it, 245 Park Avenue, the head honchos, the commissioner and his folks. Is going to be, how do you call this consistently based on the swivel technique? Now, I think defenders are moving away from it and going back to how they were tackling before that technique got popular. Shocker. People were tackling defenders without using the hip drop. But the swivel technique is one aspect of the hip drop. The hip drop in and of itself, even if you're alongside the running the ball carrier, it's literally just pulling them straight down, or kind of like leaning back like Fat Joe and trying to pull them back on top of you. That's still a hip drop, even if you're not swiveling into the ball carrier's legs. And that's where it's going to be a point of contention from all parties involved. A lot of the players that got hurt last season and the season prior from the hip drop technique were not the swivel technique. It was still just that grab on top of them, wrap up, and then just fall straight down, which can still do catastrophic damage to the lower body, the hips, the knees, ankles, shins, legs. Ugh. So I'm going to be very interested to see how they execute that call on a consistent rate. Nevertheless, it was late March where the competition committee unanimously agreed for this ban. The NFL Players Association, shockingly to me, they opposed the rule. And I think it's because of that inconsistency and that gray area that wasn't well defined in Article 18. So they're backing the defenders, trying to give them an opportunity to defend and not run the average score per game up even higher, even though that's what the NFL wants. It's all about ratings and money. NFL executive Jeff Miller said the hip drop tackle was used 230 times last season and resulted in 15 players missing time with injuries, which is roughly 20 to 25 times the standard injury rate. So essentially, one player per week missed significant time due to this technique. And that's 20 to 25 times the average or the standard injury rate. Something has to be done. And I think anytime any league or structure or organization makes a widespread change like that, there's going to be some drawback to it, or some area that they can't fully account for or may miss, but you got to do something. So shout out to the NFL for trying to make the change. This was borrowed from New Zealand rugby's rule structure. All right. This was what they considered the hip drop in rugby, and how they tried to resolve that issue in their sport. Rich McKay, the CEO of the Atlanta Falcons, used to be the GM for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they won a Super Bowl with John Gruden back in 2003. He had this to say, quote, "This isn't the elimination of the hip drop. This is an elimination of a swivel technique that doesn't get used very often. When it is used, it is incredibly injurious to the runner. The runner is purely defenseless. Yes, we outlawed the hip drop, but what you may think are the drag from behind where he falls on the..." Didn't finish that part. He says that's still a tackle. This is only that tackle where the player is lifting themselves in the air and then falling on the legs. So like I said, you're not really banning the hip drop. The way that you're phrasing it in Article 18 is not what you're actually doing. You're banning a variation of the hip drop, the swivel. Just say we're banning the swivel technique and the hip drop is still legal. Because if you're not banning the hip drop altogether, you're leaving a lot of gray area, a lot of wiggle room for players to try to navigate around this specificity. And I don't think that's best for the league. Again, I'm grateful that the NFL is trying to do something, but even with Rich McKay giving this quote, he kind of told on himself, like, you're telling us this gray area to the hip drop instead of saying no hip drop whatsoever. It takes me back to when T.O. First got that horse collar tackle that ended up getting that technique removed from the game and penalized. He broke his leg, ended up missing, I think, the second half of that season, ended up coming back to play in the Super Bowl on said broken leg because it wasn't fully healed. But that changed the landscape of tackling from that standpoint. It's not like T.O. is trucking folks, even though he's big, but he's still a big guy. And defenders were trying to figure out, man, how do I get him to the ground? Tried that technique. I think it was Roy Williams. And the NFL said, figure something else out. And this is very similar. Guys trying to tackle, 5'10", 5'11" safeties and 6'1", 6'2" linebackers that might be 230, 240. They're trying to tackle tight ends that go 250, 260. They might be 6'3", 6'4". Yes, you're at a disadvantage. But got to be something different. What was I going to say? I was just going to say that anytime you have a ball carrier going in one direction, and as a defender, you're trying to tackle them that in a way that moves them against the momentum, their natural momentum, I think that should be considered illegal. I'm not saying like you hit a guy head to head and you try to drive them straight backwards. I'm not talking about that. But like if they're running straight line and you're coming from some angle and you don't try to take them in the natural direction of the momentum, you try to like change their momentum, like either straight down or in some other unnatural way. It should be addressed. And I think the straight drop, hip drop, like where you just grab them and try to just pull straight down, that also needs to be taken out the game. I think they'll figure it out this season though. I don't like saying knock on wood, but I don't wish this for any of the players. There's going to be a high likelihood because of this inconsistency of this rule that a player is going to have a significant injury from that hip drop technique that's not the swivel technique, that wasn't properly addressed in this Article 18. And that's when the NFL is going to be like, oh, I see what they were talking about. It's going to be a player of note, a significant player, and I pray that it's not such a significant injury that they can't come back from it, but it's going to be somebody of notoriety, and the defender's going to grab them, and they're just going to fall straight down through that ball carrier's body, and something's going to snap. And it's going to take that for the NFL to be like, yeah, no hip drop whatsoever. Don't try the technique at all. No aspect of that technique is legal. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about that. All right, we're back for round 2 of episode 2. I have transfer locations. How unprofessional of me. I know. No one's paying me. So you're going to take what you're going to get. My time ran out at the bar branch. And I am now officially at the Julia Davis branch. If you can hear the bass bumping in the background, there's actually a studio right there. And actually has some good beats over there. I don't know if it's homemade beats or if they bought them or whatever, but sound really good. The rap, the flow sounds pretty solid. I have no clue what they're saying, but it sounds pretty good. I thought it was going to be some trash music over there, but hopefully it's not interrupting the sound that we got going here. I will say that the audio I had recorded at the other location was lost because they will just cut the screens off when you're out of time. So I am going to try to salvage that audio from the video that I recorded on these beautiful Samsung Galaxy S8s, even though they're not paying me to say that. And then we're going to add this audio in behind it. I only had one other thing to talk about because I know we were up on an hour. Was the new kickoff rules. Again, shout out to the XFL. Long live the XFL. I had some video content I wanted to start doing years ago with the XFL that I never got around to before its eventual demise or absorption. We'll say that. It didn't die. It just got, it emerged, you know. But I had some, history stuff that I wanted to do and just talk about, like, the progression of the league from 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0. And I still got some stuff in the vault that I could probably eventually put on the page and upload down the road. We'll see. But the one thing that lives on from the XFL, because the NFL took many other things from the XFL over the years, camera angles and other concepts. But now the NFL is adopting XFL 3.0's kickoff rules. The kickoff rules that the UFL chose not to use, which was odd enough from my perspective. You're getting ready to see the NFL do these kickoff rules that you pretty much created, and then you choose to move away from them as you merge with another league. It kind of didn't make sense. I thought it would have drew more eyeballs to the UFL this past spring. Just that simple, hey, I'm curious to see what this kickoff looks like, and now I'll get a chance to see it before the NFL season starts. But I guess they didn't see it that way. Anyway, the hybrid kickoff rule is essentially taking all of the return team players and lining them up straight across from all of the kickoff team players. I'll see if I'll be able to get a graphic up as I work on my editing skills and whatnot. Shout out to Kevin Seifert from ESPN. He posted a picture of what the graphic looks like, or what the alignment looks like between the kickoff team and the return team. You'll see that the returners or the return team is going to have 9 players, between 9 to 10 players, lined up roughly 5 yards apart from the kickoff team. They have 5 to 10 yards in what is known as the setup zone. The return team has between 5 to 10 yards, known as the setup zone, in which they can place 9 to 10 players. I think they have to have at least 9. Yeah, it says at least 9 players in the setup zone to have a legal formation. And then you'll have 1 to 2 men back in the landing zone to return the kick. And the landing zone is pretty much from the goal line to the 20. Now, the kickoff itself is going to be moved from, well, it's not going to be moved, I should say. It stays at the 35. However, the kickoff team is going to be moved from their own 35, the kicking team's 35, to the receiving team's 40-yard line. I know that sounds odd. If you haven't seen any XFL kickoffs from last season, last spring, look some up on YouTube. It's not too complicated. It's harder to explain than it is to actually do. So the kickoff team, straight across, 10 players across the receiving team's 40, and the receiving team is lined up 5 yards away from the 35 to the 30. That's the setup zone. So it's not 10 yards. It's 5 yards for the setup zone between the 35 and the 30 for the receiving team. Kicker, solo dolo, on the kicking side of the field by himself, is looking not to just drill the kick through the back of the end zone as we've seen in years past. This is the reason for this, the rationale behind this, is because the NFL is trying to revive the kickoff. They're trying to make it a valid play again. I think one of the notes I had here was that It accounts for nearly 1,000 plays that can be added to NFL games over the course of a full season. 32 teams, 18 weeks of play. That could be an extra 1,000 plays that are added back to the game because of this new kickoff. And it's primarily because the kicker is looking to get the ball to land in the landing zone. That's the valid area that you want the ball to at least be caught, ideally to bounce, because that gives the kickoff team added advantage. So kicker kicks the ball, aims for the landing zone. As soon as that ball is caught by the receiving team, the returner, or as soon as that ball lands in the landing zone, the ball is live, which means then and only then can the kickoff team move. Otherwise, they have to stand there and wait as the ball is in the air. When it lands, hits the ground, or is caught, kickoff team can move, maneuver their way, and figure out whatever strategy that special teams coordinators come up with to maneuver around the receiving teams, the blockers, and try to get to that landing zone, get to that returner, make the tackle, recover the ball. Now, here are some of the implications of this new rule. All right. First of all, the rule passed almost unanimously. It was surprising to see that there was some resistance to it, considering that as it stood prior to the rule being changed, the kickoff was a dead play. But the rule passed 29-3, so there were 3 owners that abstained or voted it down. I'm curious to know who those owners were. I know one of them was the 49ers owner, which is interesting. Beyond that, I went through the setup. The landing zone. This is going to be the key component to this format. So, if the ball lands in the landing zone, the returner doesn't catch it. It just bounces, hits the ground in the landing zone. Again, the goal line to the 20 on the receiving side. And the ball dribbles into the end zone. So it's kind of like a squib kick that lands in the landing zone and then goes into the end zone. Then the ball comes out to the 20-yard line. So that's the traditional old school touchback. But it's a different way of getting there. If the ball lands in the end zone, or if it goes out the back of the end zone, then the ball comes out to the 30. So that's a 10-yard advantage. Makes a big difference for an offense, believe it or not, that 10 extra yards. If the ball is kicked out of bounds, so say the kicker just shanks one, goes directly out of bounds, or we've seen receiving players at times, if it's close to the sideline, they'll stick 1 foot out of bounds, have 1 foot in bounds, and then catch the ball, that strategy. That ball will come to the 40-yard line. So if it gets kicked out of bounds, 40-yard line on a receiving side. If the ball lands short of the landing zone, so if it lands from the 20-yard line on the receiving team side and up into the field, anything prior to the 20, then the ball comes to the 40. So the squib kick only works if you get the ball to initially land in the landing zone. Other than that, the squib kick is dead. This also eliminates surprise onside kicks. Now, teams can still do onside kicks. They just won't be able to do them spontaneously. Like what we saw in that Super Bowl. I think it was it the Saints and the Colts? 09? Saints and the Colts 09. I think in the third quarter, the beginning of the third quarter, coming out of halftime, the Colts tried to do a surprise onside kick with the traditional kickoff formation, and they ended up getting that. And then I think they scored on that. I can't remember for sure. I know it was that Super Bowl. It was either that one or the other Colts Super Bowl. But that's dead. And it doesn't happen frequent enough to where we're going to even notice the difference. So I saw people crying about that when the rule first went down. I'm like, man, people just want to complain about anything. It's a good rule. If you do want to do an onside kick, you just have to declare it ahead of time so that the other team can set their formation up and prepare. That's the only thing that's really a drawback. Squib kicks don't happen frequent enough either to really cause any pushback on this rule change. I think this is a good rule change. I like the kickoff format when I first saw it in the XFL. I'm glad that the NFL is adopting it. And I think it's safer. I mean, they say here the aim is to reduce the number of high-speed collisions that cause injuries. I mean, it's just common sense. We saw players get paralyzed on kickoff, significant head injuries. I think Jason Sehorn, I remember reading up on that's just the novelty of a white cornerback. I think he was a draw to a lot of black folk, but I was just reading up on him the other day, just like seeing what he was doing or what he was up to. And I saw a note that he had, because I wondered how his career ended, he had tore his ACL on a kickoff return. I don't think it was a contact injury, so I'm just throwing it out there, just came to mind. But the number of injuries that stemmed from that play is what led to the league being comfortable letting the play die until they figured out a better solution. I think this is the better solution. So yeah, I'm excited about it. I think that as soon as the rule went into play as well, a lot of teams started to alter their roster strategies of like, okay, we need to have more of these positions. These other positions are expendable backup guys because there are certain special teamers that will never really see the field on offense or defense. So instead of stocking up on wide receivers or DBs, maybe we get a little bit beefier, get some offensive linemen in there, some linebackers, some bigger bodies, because they're going to be more stationary. There's less wiggle room, and you want to be able to cover a larger portion of the field. So it changes that aspect, and the return man is valuable again. Shout out to Dante Hall. Shout out to Devin Hester. Shout out to Josh Cribbs. Shout out to all of the returners of old who made the plays exciting. I think we'll get back to that point again. All you got to really do is find one or two creases in these formations of the kickoff, and it's off to the races. Maybe you have a backside defender. If the ball carrier is going to the right, the backside defender just takes a straight angle to the front pylon to make sure this, it's more strategy that can go into it now. I'm excited about it and to see how they play it out in the preseason and eventually the regular season. That's all I had, man. I waited for a couple hours to get back in here to finish up the episode. I was definitely like, man, do I want to go ahead and can this episode and just re-record and start over? I was like, nah. I think y'all will be okay with some slightly below par audio so that I could have this documented. And I'm only adding on an extra 15 to 20 minutes to the hour that I already done. So I cut it down. Last episode was pushing 2 hours. I think I was at like 1 hour 57, hour 58. Now I'm at like maybe an hour 20. And we're going to keep paring it down. I'm just getting used to the topics, talking through them. I realize how much I can ramble and figuring out how much to cover in what episode. I really want to aim for 30 to 45 minutes, an hour max. So that's all I got, man. Appreciate y'all for listening in, for watching. Second episode of Too Deep Coverage Podcast, a.k.a. 2DC. Again, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with friends and family, with your loved ones. Throw it on your socials. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to shoot me a DM on IG, Too Deep Coverage. I'll have an email up shortly. I do think I already got an email set up. Again, it's been a minute since episode 1, so let me see here. Do I have an email? I do. Email address is 2deepcoverage@gmail.com. That's the number 2, deep coverage, all one word, at gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you're not on Instagram, you can always shoot me that email. Looking for topic ideas as well, things you'd like to hear me discuss or get my perspective on, as well as just any feedback that you have, things I could be doing better, how I could improve. I'm open to listening to all of that, reading all of that. So I appreciate your time. Appreciate your eyes and your ears. Appreciate the love. Until next time, y'all be easy. Peace.